I'm Iain Curry, this is Chasing Cars, and with me is the new Citroen C5 X, a return for the French brand into the large car market. Now, Citroen itself doesn't even have a classification for this very strange, unusual, but cool-looking car. It is part SUV with its slightly higher ride height, it's part sedan and also part wagon. So call it what you will, but it's certainly different. There's very little else like it on the market. Perhaps you could look to a Skoda Superb wagon, a Volkswagen all-track with that slightly higher ride height, but in a way it stands alone in the market, just as a Citroen should, for they are famed for their innovation and being slightly quirky, slightly different. So the C5 X enters Australia in just one single high specification grade. It costs just over $57,000 plus on-road costs, so you'll be looking at just over $60,000 to drive away, which certainly pitches it at quite an expensive sedan, SUV, wagon, whatever you want to call it. Rivals, you'd be looking at the Skoda Superb wagon, perhaps the Volkswagen Passat all-track, all these different kind of hybrid vehicles. We're only getting one engine choice, which is a 1.6 litre turbocharged four-cylinder, which gives 133 kilowatts and 250 Newton meters. So it's not a stonking engine by any stretch of the imagination. What will follow next year, in the second half of 2023, is a plug-in hybrid version of this. Now, they haven't revealed exactly how much that will cost. We can imagine it'll be maybe $10,000 or $15,000 more than this one, so you'll be looking at $75,000 to drive away. And that gives you an extra 80 kilowatts that has from its motor and small battery pack. And that would probably go really well with this car if you consider it's there for a nice, serene, smooth drive with roughly 50 kilometers of pure electric range. But for now, we're just here with the petrol version, and that's all you can get right now. So let's have a look around it. So with the plastic cladding and slightly higher ride height, that 198 millimeter ground clearance, the car's not really an off-roader at all. It's still front-wheel drive, so you won't be doing anything that you would in a Subaru Outback, let's say. But what you do get is some very cool styling, of course. Let's just have a look at the front here. Up the top, you have these daytime running lights, and these are your main driving lights down here. This very cool chrome strip across the front into the distinctive Citroen chevrons there. And then quite an intricate little part of the lower bumper as well. Very cool design also on your bonnet, with this sort of cutaway bit also both sides. So helping with that SUV look is quite fat arches, both front and rear, and also the obligatory plastic cladding. All Australian cars get 19-inch, quite funky alloy wheels there, and reasonably fat rubber as well, which helps certainly with the cushioning nature of this car. Contrasting black roofs, they all come as standard also on the C5 X, as does a sunroof, but it only opens halfway. It's a glass roof, but it doesn't stretch the entirety of the vehicle, so you don't benefit from it in the back seats. The color choice itself is a little bit disappointing, if I'm honest. There's three different shades of gray you can go for, a white, a black, and the only real color is a blue, which we haven't seen today, but it probably looks the more spectacular choice next to these grays. So this C-pillar here, this is very cool, very intricate. This is a one-way mirror. So if you sat in the back of the car, you can see out perfectly, but you won't be seeing anything looking in there. Very nice design cue as well. You've got the top roof spoiler and also this funky, very sporty looking rear spoiler as well. But one thing I have noticed on our particularly wet drive was no rear wiper blade. Citroen says they don't need it because it's almost like a sedan back, but to me it's still a bit hatchback wagony and would really benefit from that rear wiper. And just like the front, almost this V-shaped styling for the rear lights as well. They look particularly funky, don't they? Certainly a bit better than that kind of plastic cladding at the base. That's perhaps again for the SUV type look. But from the back, it's actually a very attractive thing. Not as wide as you'd think, but it certainly accentuates how fat those arches are. So as standard, you get an auto tailgate with hands-free foot swipey feature, which of course is incredibly useful if you've got big bags full of shopping or a child in your arms, that sort of thing. And that reveals a 545 litre boot, which is pretty expensive, I think you'll agree. And what I do like is there's this lip at the base that will stop your shopping rolling out. Let's say if you're parked on a hill, there's this giant load space here as well. I'm not quite sure if I think it's a great idea or a terrible idea. It might get damaged when you put stuff on it, but at the same time, a really good thing to lean on if you're getting heavier stuff in. Little handle pull there, that gets the seats down. You get that both sides, you get 1,640 litres of space, which is again pretty massive, which shows how good wagons really are. if it's a wagon that is. To get things down, just another swipe of the foot. It does sound like a reversing truck, of course, but at the same time, very, very convenient. So the first thing that grabs you getting in here is exactly how comfortable it is. It feels reasonably large inside, but these seats, they've got lovely width to them, lovely bolstering as well. Citroen have done a great job. I think Citroen probably do make the best seats in the business, and you can feel the mattress type material. It's padding on padding on padding. So your bum is so cosseted, your back sits back. So you just know that after a long trip, you're going to feel incredibly comfortable. All right, what else have we got through here? So nice soft touch surfaces for the top of the dashboard and the doors. Loads of soft padding through here. It really does feel good quality, and rubberized bottle holder at the base, but a bit of hard plastic down there. Look at this steering wheel. What do you think? It's kind of round, a bit square as well. Very Citroen, very different. This weird section in here as well. Quite cool. Piano black for the middle section. Looks great now, but a bit fingerprinty and scratchy. That might change all that. Very simple into gear, just this little toggle switch here as well. Of course, your bottle holders. Now, little section here at the front, that's where you do your phone charging. That's particularly useful. The space for a second one in there. Really good deep bin storage in there, hiding away a USB-C port, another USB-C port there as well. Complete wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, so you don't actually need to use those plugs for that. What I really like is the ventilation, climate control through this little panel here. Citroen has been guilty in the past of running everything through the screen, and it was always a nightmare. So well done, Citroen, for reverting back to this. So Citroen's also found ways to get its chevron badging into cool little touches through the car. You'll notice it on the seats, all through the padding as well. And if you look at the front in the dashboard here, there's this bit of trim. That's also chevron. You've got that big swathe through the door as well. It feels like that wants to be classy wood, but it's a bit plasticky, but it really does look quite cool nonetheless. And if you look up here, there's my glass roof. You've got to manually open the slidey cover, which at least makes things fast, and then just electrically opens to about halfway. I'd prefer it to go all the way back, but you can't have everything, I suppose. Okay, let's have a look at the 12-inch touchscreen. So there's some quite cool digital features on the C5 X. I've got my digital dashboard, which isn't necessarily big, but it's very clear and easy to toggle through just on my stalk. I can just show my sat nav, my speed, my radar cruise control, etc. But you won't be able to see it, but I have an excellent head-up colored display, and that shows your vitals such as speed, speed limit, and also your navigation directions. But what I really like is this giant 12-inch central screen. So this is my touch screen, and as you can see, with the wireless CarPlay, I'm able to go the full length of that screen, which isn't always the case. So it's really nice to have it that big. So if I just swipe right this way, that just gives me my little shortcut menu. So it really does show quite how intuitive the whole thing is. And another thing I wanted to show was just this is how you very quickly turn off your driver assist system. So there's the lane keep assist that I've turned off when I'm driving, and the stop start. That's quite easy to do, but it does default back to on when you restart the car. So this is Citroen's first effort at putting in a bird's eye view 360-degree camera. And as you can see, it's very easy to operate. Looks great through this big 12-inch screen, nicely high resolution, and I can just toggle between my front, my side, or my rear, or that overhead camera. And as you can see also, there's loads of sensor spaces as well. It's going to make it very hard to have a car park bingle in this Citroen. So as you'd expect from the wagon shape, you are pretty well accommodating in the back of this Citroen. Legroom's excellent, headroom's really good. I'm 6 foot and I've got a couple of inches above me there. But also these seats, just like the front, are nicely sculpted, really wide, so you feel like you've got your own individual chair almost. The only thing I might change is I'd maybe like these seats to recline a little bit. That's a function we're seeing on more cars, just for that slightly more business class type travel. But otherwise, it is a really comfy space to be. Even the middle seat, if I sling in there, it's quite firm under my back and under my bum, but I've just about got enough headroom to make it manageable. But I will say, it's a shame that glass roof doesn't extend the length of the vehicle. It would make it a lot more airy and light in here. So the materials do feel very good in here. It's a special place to be. If you look at this padding there, that's your mattress on mattress topper basically. It's a lovely spongy surface, so make those long journeys a lot more tolerable. You're not hard done by in the back either with this door material. It's also just like the front, nice and soft here, softly padded, and the bottle holders down the bottom, that's nicely rubberized. Yeah, so all good there. In the middle section, I've got 2 USB-C ports and ventilation as well, so that should keep backseat passengers very happy indeed. So first impressions, just as we head out on the road, is exactly as expected. It's incredibly quiet in here. There's acoustic laminated glass front and rear, so you do feel very cosseted in the C5X's interior. Very quiet, very peaceful, serene so far, and just these little edgy bumps that you get through city streets, it's certainly coping with those beautifully. Hydraulic cushions, that's what this car has. A little bit different to your typical suspension you'll get on your car with just your springs and dampers. Just instead of the bump stop next to the damper, you've also got these hydraulic cushions that Citroen has thrown in just to really take the edge off those sharper bumps. So instead of hitting a bump stop when you hit a particularly hard road imperfection, just gets soaked into that lovely cushiony feel, and you really can feel it absorbing it nicely. So just the one engine choice for the C5X. It's a 1.6 turbo 4-cylinder offering 133 kilowatts and 250 newton meters of torque. Not a huge amount of power obviously, but at least that torque comes on from about 1600 revs per minute, so it can feel quite punchy around town. And it's mated to an 8-speed auto gearbox, which just as I'm going through town like this, I'm noticing it's a tiny bit jerky at low speeds, especially when I'm taking off and just coming to a stop like this. Just as I pull away, it just can be smooth, then the next minute it surprises you and it's not quite as smooth as you were expecting. But certainly nothing to be too concerned about. So just with the power itself, it's much like we're getting from Citroens and Peugeots at the moment. You're not getting these highly strung, powerful, turbocharged engines. They're a bit more sedate and a bit more relevant to large family sedan, grand touring types of uses. So it's probably enough for most uses. If you were hoping for a more powerful vehicle, you have to move into something like 162 TSI Passat. That'll give you a little bit more surge and driver feel, but you can tell that the reason for this C5X is all about comfort. It's about serenity and just taking things easy, relaxing drive. So as luck would have it, a few weeks ago I actually drove a 1972 Citroen DS, and that was a car famous for its hydro pneumatic suspension, which offered that magic carpet ride type thing, which even though it would absorb bumps incredibly and sit you incredibly beautifully on the road, some people did find it a bit nauseating. And as an aside, it's also very expensive to put right when it goes wrong, and there's quite a lot of maintenance involved as well, which is one of the reasons why Citroen and other car manufacturers don't use it anymore. So the more modern version that we see on this car is its advanced comfort suspension, and that does work with these little pillows in the suspension, if you like, little hydraulic cushions that work alongside your typical spring and damper, but it's just got these little cushions in there as well to absorb those bigger bumps, so you don't actually hit the bump stop quite as fiercely if you hit a large road imperfection. It'll just soak it up nicely. And I must say, on initial try here, because there's plenty of potholes for me to go through, here's a good one to hit, and you can feel it just settles very quickly on it. It's not as you'd maybe expect the old Citroens to be, that just glide over it. It's certainly not doing that. You'll still feel the hit, but of course it means that the car's not so softly sprung that it won't be able to handle a corner or anything. This car is going to be able to do many different things. Right, I'm just going through the city like I am now. There's a couple of things. There's the stop-start system, which I'm now going to turn off because that's taking a little bit of time to fire up again. There's that slightly jerkier gearbox again, like didn't take much throttle response there, and it just immediately jerked forward a bit. I'm also going to turn off the lane keep assist, whereas it's nice to have for some people. I have been finding it trying to pull me in lane a little bit too much, and it's taken away the serenity of the drive somewhat. It's as long as you're concentrating on the road as you should be, it's I'd certainly recommend turning it off. And I have noticed when I've been driving with it off on slightly more open roads, it means that the drive is a lot smoother and, you know, a bit less effortful, because it is starting to tug at my hands a little bit. And so just as we're cruising through town now, so this is a nice bit of road I'm going through here, and it is so comfortable. It is so quiet. All these little bumps are just getting glided over, and it really is a relaxing thing to drive, and it really is helped by these next generation comfort seats with their padding, which is mattress on mattress almost. It's just pillows everywhere, and it's not completely sink in. It's not like your favourite most comfy armchair at home. They're still very supportive, but you feel the width of them and a nice curve to them, and you'd feel like after a good few hours driving you're going to get out feeling very, very refreshed. Heated as well, as is the steering wheel. So Citroen's quoting a 6 litres per 100 kilometre economy on this vehicle. I can just press this button on my stalk, and just in my head-up display there it shows me what my average consumption is. We're getting 7.4 litres per 100 kilometres, which is reasonable. It's certainly not too bad, but this is why maybe if you were doing a lot of city driving, the idea of a plug-in hybrid version of this would be perhaps more appealing to you. On the plug-in hybrid side, so Citroen's just told us that they will be bringing the PHEV version of this vehicle to Australia in the second half of 2023, and that means you'll get this same 1.6 litre engine with 133 kilowatts, but you'll also get an extra 80 kilowatts from the electric motor and a small battery pack, which it looks like that, based on the European figures, should give us about 50 kilometres of all-electric range. And I actually think it would work really well for this car. I'm worried about what the price might be. It will probably add $10,000 or $15,000 to the driveway price, which is already over $60,000 for this car, so you really are getting up there with that. But I just imagine it would really suit the nature of this car as a luxury quiet cruiser, to be able to just go about your business through town or even on the highway in utter silence. It would be a really appealing proposition, and certainly the brand has, with its sister brand Peugeot, already has plug-in hybrids in the market. It'll know whether that will work here, and I assume by the fact they're bringing it here that they know that there will be a sector of the market, albeit a small one, that will want the plug-in version of this. As standard, there is the radar cruise function, which has level 2 autonomy, which means I'm just able to set my speed here, and it's just going to pick up the car in front, and it will bring my car to a complete stop. I'll just hover over the brake in case it doesn't, but no, it's picked up that car well, and it has stopped it, and I'll just follow it through this roundabout. Let's see how smooth it is. It's a bit jerky, hasn't picked the car in front up yet, like me going slow through that roundabout, but now it's picked the car up again and it's cruising along nicely, and there's traffic happening, so let's just check it comes to a stop again. It's going a bit quick, so yeah, not perfect, but I tried it on the highway as well, and it did work very well there. I do have a few drive modes in the car. I'm able just to touch this little button here. I've got Sport, Normal and Eco. I found it's great just to cruise along in normal. That seems to suit the car well. But on a decent twisty bit of road, if you sling it into Sport mode, and you can just feel the weight of the suspension just get a little bit weightier, because it is light as all hell. If I just show you in normal mode, it is very, very light suspension, which makes it easy to drive, but it is a bit numb on the old feedback front. But if you put it in Sport, there's just a little bit more weight, a bit more feel to the steering, so it makes it a little bit easier to plant in those corners if you're flinging it around a little bit. Also, your throttle response is a little bit keener. It holds the gear a little bit longer as well. But as we know, it's not really a sporting vehicle, won't be used for that sort of stuff, but it's nice to know you have that and at hand if you need it. So I've only been given the camera in the car after we've finished our little bit of back road, sweeping corner roads, and the Citroens actually behave reasonably well on those sort of roads. I must say I was expecting it to be very, very understeery, especially in the wet conditions we have here, but it actually feels reasonably well controlled. There's a bit of body roll as you'd expect for the softly sprung nature of the car, but the grips felt very good. It feels balanced and reasonably nice to steer in that Sport mode. So yeah, surprisingly good to put into a corner, and maybe because it isn't raised as much as a normal SUV, it's that slightly lower ride height, maybe your centre of gravity is just a little bit lower, so it feels a little bit more keen without being a sporting vehicle. At the same time, the engine will only do so much for you. Again, if you could get into that plug-in hybrid with the extra 80 kilowatts, it would feel slightly more sporting. But at least you have little paddle shifters to navigate through if you want to take a bit more control in the turns. As for the actual ride height of the vehicle, because it is very important for a lot of buyers that would typically get into an SUV because they like being higher on the road, they like the fact that it's slightly easier to get in and out of such a vehicle with the higher ride height. So the C5X has a ground clearance of 198 millimeters, which isn't bad at all. Not like a proper high SUV, but just that extra bit to make life easier to get in and out. And I do notice my level of traffic, I'm quite a bit higher than your normal hatchback and sedan, but certainly lower than the likes of a proper large SUV. But yeah, the more I live with this car, the more I'm starting to like it actually. It seems to just fulfill its remit very well, which is a cosseted, soft, easy, comfortable, relaxing drive. My steering is so light, the seats are so comfortable, it's so well insulated. It really is a great city car because it doesn't feel massively huge like a large SUV, difficult to negotiate around. It still feels like a nice sedan or wagon type vehicle. I must say the colour head-up display is working particularly well. I'm a real big fan of it actually, even if my polarised glasses are blocking it a little bit. But to have my navigation instructions quite clear in there, my speed and also the speed limit as well, it's just getting that key information right in my eye line so I don't have to take the eyes off of the road. Because the actual digital driver display in front of me is quite small. It does give all the information quite well also, but because it's not terribly large, it's really helpful to have that head-up alternative. Really is a good solution. Right, I'm just going to give the C5X a quick acceleration test. I'll be fair to it, put it in sport. Let's see what this 1.6 litre turbo will do. Okay, the gearbox got a bit panicked there and quickly dropped down a gear. So yeah, it doesn't enjoy that sort of use, I don't think. And it can be a bit noisy and squealy when it gets up in those higher rev ranges, but again, it's not really what this car is going to be used for. It's much better in its element, just cruising along nice and serenely. But it feels reasonably quick when it gets going. It's not particularly slow. So I'm just thinking at who the C5X would be aimed at, who would be its buyer type. Obviously being front wheel drive and not all wheel drive, it'll be a different buyer to say the Volkswagen Passat All-Track or a Subaru Outback, which are reasonably similar in shape and size. Those will be for the more active lifestyle people that want to get unsealed road, a little bit of off-roading. This vehicle's not going to do that despite its slightly higher ground clearance. But certainly older empty nesters that need a bit more space for whatever equipment and want something quite elegant looking, younger professionals maybe with some sports gear, and certainly young families it would work for. The boot space is big enough, there's certainly loads of room in the back, very comfortable. So overall I've driven the C5X for about 3 hours now over city streets, some country roads and a bit of highway as well, and I'm just learning exactly where its best features are and in exactly what element it prefers to be, and certainly cruising along the highway at speed, very relaxed with its radar cruise control, and as long as it's a decent bit of track like a lot of highways are, it is incredibly smooth, just absorbs those bumps beautifully and you just feel like you're floating along. It really is very, very impressive in that regard, and certainly in these seats as well. You finish a journey and you feel absolutely refreshed. It's lovely in the city as well. It does pick out the worst of those bumps and hits and seems to deal with them reasonably well. Not perhaps the cushion of air like you might have been expecting from a Citroen. It still feels the bashes, but they're reasonably thick tyres as well, so they've certainly gone for as many different ways to suppress those bumps, make it as comfortable as possible for the driver and occupants. But certainly not a performance vehicle, the engine sees to that, but at the same time it's horses for courses. You don't need a performance engine in this car. It's just a brilliant, smooth, soft Grand Tourer that just makes you feel incredibly relaxed, and that's lovely. I suppose the question will be, is anyone going to buy them? Citroen does have its C5 Aircross, its medium SUV, and as we know, that's exactly what Australians are buying at the moment and have done for years. But Citroen says this is a vehicle for the SUV rejector. You want something different, you want to stand out. I'm sure they're not expecting to shift a huge amount of numbers, but it is their new flagship model, and it is an impressive looking thing. It's a beautifully comfortable thing, and I can see the desirability of it. It's very high spec as well, so it ticks a lot of boxes, and at the same time you can practically guarantee not many others on the road will have the same car, and that's a lot of appeal to some people. So that's our first experience of the new C5X, and what do we think? Well, it's certainly going to be a niche model, and in a way it's exactly what a Citroen should be. It's unusually shaped, it can't be defined in a particular segment, and it is incredibly comfortable. Sure, it's expensive at over $60,000 to drive away, but if you're seeking something that's a break from the norm that you can pretty much guarantee you won't see very many on the road, it's a real winner in that regard. I'd love to know your thoughts on the car. Please leave your comments below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as ever, thank you very much for watching Chasing Cars.